Imagine a world where Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who had conquered most of Europe, wasn't defeated at Waterloo. Because on that fateful Sunday, June 18, 1815, he very nearly wasn't. The battle, often seen as a decisive Allied victory, was in fact, as Wellington himself admitted, the nearest run thing you ever saw in your life. Welcome to Extrano Chronicles, where we peel back the layers of history to reveal the untold stories and shocking truths behind the events you thought you knew. Today, we journey to a muddy field in Belgium, where the fate of a continent hung by the thinnest of threads, determined by a relentless downpour, a hidden slope, and a commander's agonizing illness. The year is 1815. Europe has just breathed a collective sigh of relief. Napoleon, the insatiable emperor, had been exiled to the tiny island of Elba. The Bourbon monarchy was restored in France, and the great powers were redrawing the map of Europe at the Congress of Vienna. Peace, it seemed, had finally arrived. But Napoleon was never one to accept the final curtain. On February 26, 1815, he slipped away from Elba with just 1,000 loyal soldiers. His audacious return sparked what became known as the 100 Days. As he marched towards Paris, the French army, sent to apprehend him, instead defected to his cause, swelling his ranks. Louis XVIII fled, and Napoleon reclaimed his throne without firing a single shot. This wasn't a triumphant return. It was a desperate gamble. The Allied powers immediately declared him an outlaw, assembling a seventh coalition determined to crush him once and for all. Two main armies mobilized: the Anglo-Allied forces under the Duke of Wellington, a diverse mix of British, Dutch, Belgian, German, and Hanoverian troops, and the Prussian army led by the formidable Field Marshal Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher. Napoleon's strategy was audacious. Strike quickly. Defeat Wellington and Blücher separately before their armies could unite. He marched into Belgium, aiming to drive a wedge between them. On June 16, he engaged the Prussians at Ligny, forcing them to retreat, while a simultaneous engagement at Quatre Bras saw Wellington hold his ground against Marshal Ney. But here's the crazy part. The night before the main battle, a torrential downpour turned the fields around Waterloo into a quagmire. You probably didn't know this, but Napoleon, ever the artillery enthusiast, deliberately delayed his attack on the 18th until late morning, waiting for the ground to dry. He believed his cannons would be ineffective in the mud, and his cavalry charges would be bogged down. This seemingly tactical decision would prove catastrophic. Wellington, meanwhile, had chosen his ground with characteristic shrewdness. His position was along a ridge, Mont Saint-Jean, with a reverse slope that concealed the bulk of his forces from French artillery fire. This was a masterclass in defensive positioning, a tactic Napoleon would only fully grasp when it was too late. He had also established strongpoints at the farmhouses of Hougoumont and La Haye-Sainte. The battle finally began around 11:30 a.m. with a diversionary attack on Hougoumont, a large farmhouse complex on Wellington's right flank. What started as a feint quickly escalated into a brutal, hours-long struggle. Thousands of French soldiers were tied up trying to take the strategically vital, yet ultimately impenetrable, position. The stubborn defense of Hougoumont was a testament to Allied resilience. Simultaneously, Napoleon launched his main assault on Wellington's center-left. d'Erlon's First Corps advanced in massive, unwieldy columns, presenting easy targets for British musketry and artillery. The British heavy cavalry, led by the Earl of Uxbridge, then charged, routing the French infantry. It was a spectacular, if overly enthusiastic, success. But the British cavalry, carried away by their initial triumph, pursued too far, losing formation and suffering heavy casualties from French counterattacks. This reckless bravery cost Wellington dearly, weakening a crucial part of his line. It was a chaotic dance of triumph and tragedy, all unfolding under the grim, grey skies. As the afternoon wore on, Marshal Ney, acting on Napoleon's orders, launched a series of massive cavalry charges against Wellington's centre. Wave after wave of French cuirassiers and lancers thundered up the slope. A truly terrifying sight. But Wellington's infantry formed into impenetrable squares, bristling with bayonets. The French cavalry, without infantry support, could not break them. Imagine the scene. Thousands of horsemen, some of the finest cavalry in Europe, repeatedly smashing themselves against these human fortresses, only to be repulsed by disciplined musket fire and the sheer courage of the Allied troops. It was a stalemate, but one that drained French morale and precious time. And time, for Napoleon, was running out. Another lesser-known fact. During these critical hours, Napoleon was reportedly suffering from a severe bout of hemorrhoids, which may have limited his ability to ride and personally direct the battle as he once had. While not a decisive factor, it certainly didn't help his already strained decision-making process under immense pressure. The Allied line, though battered, held firm. But then came the fall of La Haye-Sainte, a key farmhouse in the centre. Its loss exposed Wellington's main line to French artillery and infantry, threatening to break his position. For a moment, the battle teetered on the brink. Wellington, desperate, was heard to exclaim, "Give me Knight or give me Blücher." Quote, and Blücher, true to his word, was coming. Despite the grueling retreat from Ligny 2 days prior, and a punishing march through the mud, the Prussian army was slowly but surely arriving on Napoleon's right flank. Their appearance, first as a distant threat and then as a direct assault, was the turning point. Blücher's vanguard engaged the French 6th Corps under Lobau, forcing Napoleon to divert vital reserves. Napoleon, seeing his chance slipping away, made his final, desperate move. At around 7:30 p.m., he committed his elite Imperial Guard, his most formidable troops, to a final assault on Wellington's weakened centre. These veterans, who had rarely known defeat, marched uphill, confident in their emperor's presence and their own invincibility. But Wellington had one last trick up his sleeve. Concealed behind the ridge, his British foot guards rose, unleashing devastating volleys of musket fire at point-blank range into the advancing Imperial Guard. The shock was immense. The guard faltered, then broke. The cry, "La garde recule," "the guard is retreating," spread like wildfire through the French lines. It was an unthinkable sight, a psychological blow from which the French army could not recover. Seeing their elite broken, French morale shattered, Wellington seized the moment, ordering a general advance of his entire line. Up, guards, and at them. He is famously, if perhaps apocryphally, quoted as saying, "The combined Anglo-Allied and Prussian forces surged forward. The French army collapsed into a chaotic rout. Thousands fled, pursued relentlessly by the Prussians, who were eager for revenge after Ligny. Napoleon himself narrowly escaped capture, his carriage abandoned. Waterloo wasn't just a defeat. It was an annihilation. The final, crushing blow to his imperial ambitions. Within days, Napoleon would abdicate for the second and final time. eventually exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he would die 6 years later. The Battle of Waterloo marked the end of an era, ushering in decades of relative peace in Europe and cementing Britain's rise as a global power. But remember, it was a battle that could have gone either way. The weather, Napoleon's health, Wellington's brilliant defensive tactics, the unwavering resolve of Allied troops, and the timely, arduous march of Blücher's Prussians all converged to create this pivotal moment. Without any one of these elements, history might have taken a very different path. The Battle of Waterloo stands as a testament to the unpredictable nature of conflict, where grand strategies can be undone by a sudden storm, and the fate of empires can rest on the courage of soldiers holding a muddy farmhouse. It was a near-run thing, indeed, and a story far more complex than the simple narrative of a tyrant's fall. If you found this deep dive into the true story of Waterloo fascinating, make sure to subscribe to Extrano Chronicles for more untold history. We unearth the hidden truths behind the world's most iconic events, bringing you narratives that challenge common beliefs and reveal the human drama behind the headlines. Join our community and never miss an episode. Thank you for watching.